Tell us about the TVB. What is its mission? What type of research do you do here?
The TVB is an organization, it's a trade organization that represents local stations all over the United States. And our mission is not so much about legal issues or spectrum. That really is more of the NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters. Our mission is more about the marketing and sales efforts of all of the television stations across the nation. So what we do is support their efforts, their commerce, across all of the platforms that they have today. So not just the TV station, but also their web properties, their mobile properties, any kind of business that the television stations are into and the station groups. We support them. We give them, from a research perspective, it's actually a very vast structure, not in terms of people, but in terms of what we actually do for them. So, for example, we have an extraordinary website with lots of information that's available to the public on the performance of television, how to buy and sell television, different market factors, how markets are different, etc. It's a very, very rich website and requires quite a lot of updating from the research team. So that's number one. Number two, we organize our efforts around our structure. So there's 3 pillars of TVB. One is advocacy, which is supporting all the efforts to promote local television and what local television and all of its assets can do for advertisers. Secondly, it's business development. So we do all of the research to help support new business endeavors, new markets, new advertising, getting advertisers more interested in local or bringing them back to local. Some of the work you may actually have seen recently, the Wall Street Journal did a story about the healthcare industry and the opportunity for those healthcare advertisers for the local markets. That's all based on research that my team here at TVB put together in conjunction with the Business Development Group. And then lastly, there's research as a core function. So we do proprietary research that supports local television initiatives. And some of that we've done some PR around in the realm of cultural currency and the power of social media and how local television and local television assets are using social media. That's what we've been working on this year.
Stacey, tell us about the cultural currency study.
Great. We embarked on a study about 8 months ago around cultural currency. And really, as we looked at the media landscape and we looked at how people were interacting across platforms in reality and virtuality, what we saw was that people live these sort of disconnected, existences, that they have lives online, they have lives offline. And when you live your life online, you need to know how you make friends, right? We all have these friends in Facebook or in LinkedIn or whatever the platform. And frankly, sometimes people, invite you to be a friend with them. You don't know who they are. You've never met them before. They may be a friend of a friend. And how do we get to know people in our virtual lives except through some sort of shared experience? And so in that thought, we realized that media and popular culture become touchstones for all of us, become a way for us to have something to share in common, and is probably the one reason why, in a world where everything is fragmenting, will bring us together. We won't lose the entirety of the mass audience because people have to have something in common. People need to be able to have something to share. They need to know that they like the same musical groups, or they read the same authors if they're still reading, or they watch the same TV shows, for example, as TVB would look at it. So we started with that premise, and we looked at media behaviors across all of social media related to television content and brands. And what we found was that the television shows that had the biggest audiences almost all the time had the biggest range of social media behaviors associated with it. So while there are smaller shows that do attract a lot of social media attention, a lot of them are much more youth-based, as you would imagine. Big broadcast shows actually do have the most amount of interaction within social media. If you look at the pure behaviors. And as we looked at that and we said, wow, that's kind of interesting, that says to me that there actually is a role for reach within our media conversation, and that it's still relevant. And how do we actually do something with that? We don't want to just talk about reach, but as we looked at about 9 different social media behaviors, whether they be on Facebook or Twitter primarily. And we said, well, is it different? We found that different primetime TV shows have very different profiles. Some were completely Facebook-oriented, some were completely Twitter-oriented. We found that by market could be very different across the United States. Some markets were Facebook markets, some markets are Twitter markets. Some stations are Facebook stations, some stations are Twitter stations. So it really does go all the way down to the program level. And it varies immensely whether you're a radio station, a television station, or a newspaper. So it's a very vast study that we actually can slice and dice. We can look at it by station group, we can look at it by DMA, we can look at it by entity, and we see incredible differences, and it helps us as we plan and develop opportunities for marketers so that you know what action standards to set. You don't work with an advertiser who says, I want to do something with your station and with Twitter, and the way I'm going to judge success is going to be on how many retweets we get. We now have the data to say, that's not the right metric. If you want to do something with our station, don't judge us on the retweets. Actually, what you should be doing is something that's more photo-based or video posting-based. Do it in Facebook. We know that that's how our fans like to engage with us, and you'll get better results. But we never had that data before. So it helps us the whole cultural currency argument is to say, we know people are engaging with our content. They're using our content to trade with each other within their own spaces, and we know how to do that with their behaviors.
So through your study, are you finding that there is a different audience profile between Facebook users and Twitter users? And if so, what are the differences?
Yeah, I think generally we find that, some of it is a little chicken and egg, right? So if a program or a piece of content is not putting up public pages within Facebook or Twitter, that obviously will impact whether or not audiences are using it. But generally, we find that in primetime television, for example, that big reality shows, competition reality shows, tend to be much more Twitter-driven. Big hit shows tend to be much more Twitter-driven. And it makes sense because these are the shows you don't want to miss. They're in the moment. You have to know what's going on so that you can actually tweet live. So big live shows, sports events, much more Twitter-focused. In terms of Facebook, these are shows that we see a lot more shows that have more complex storylines, a lot of science fiction, has a lot of Facebook fans for some reason. If you stop talking about content specifically in platforms, radio has a lot of strength with Facebook. Television, when we look at individual behaviors, local stations in particular have the highest indices among people who like to post photos and post videos within Facebook. Why? Because they're usually posting the picture of the tree that fell on their car, or the hurricane damage, or something that lets them share their community moment with others in their community. That's how TV stations are drafting off of social media and creating that platform, that canvas for community interaction. Newspapers, much more retweeting activity than other platforms. And that makes sense too, because once you get a news item, you want to be the first to share it with your community, you retweet it. So those things make a lot of sense. We are just in the process of looking at how different markets are using different social media, and as we slice and dice that, I think we will have some very interesting understanding of how different markets like to use different platforms.